All right, so I'm going to start the recording now. All right, so today what I want to cover is the page ladder, the page designer, and also the image library. So those are going to be my three focuses for right now. So I'm going to start with the page ladder. So once you log into Yearbook Avenue, we're going to go under the plan menu to page ladder. And I like to start with the page ladder because this is where you kind of figure out what's going to go on each page of your book. You know, this is a great way to decide, how big each section of the yearbook is going to be. And you can actually click in here to add section titles and descriptions for each of your pages. So this is a really great place to start. As you start, working on your pages, you will have thumbnail images like what we see here on page 2. So as the year goes on, you'll be able to scroll through and see how the yearbook is looking. And when you're ready to actually start working on each page, you can go ahead and click on the page that you want to work on. The other way to access Layout Pro, which is our page designer, is to go under the Create menu to Layout Pro. So you can get there either way. So this is where I'm going to spend the majority of my time today, because this is where you guys will spend the majority of your time. When you're on the site, you're primarily going to be designing pages. So I'm going to start with all of these tabs over here on the left side. So the first one is the Pages tab, and this is where all of the pages of the yearbook will go. So you'll see all of your pages here, and you can click on whichever page you want to work on. So I'm going to start here on a blank page so that I'm not messing with anybody's stuff. All right, so also in the Pages tab, the other thing I like to mention here is the master template. And the master template is actually a great place to put your page numbers. That's something that really helps the design at the beginning of the year, because anything that's applied to the master template is applied to all of the pages of the yearbook. And that way, if you apply page numbers, or if you have maybe there's a specific piece of artwork that you want with your page number on every page, you can apply that to the master template, and then that will automatically go on every page of your book, and you don't have to think about it. And when you're actually designing your pages, you can't even touch those page numbers, so there's no chance that you could accidentally delete them. So that's a really great thing to do right at the beginning of the year. So that's also here in the Pages tab. The next tab down is the Designs tab, and that's where all of the Jostens pre-designed templates are located. So you'll see in the drop-down, there's a lot of different categories. So up at the top, we have the custom heading, and that's where anything that you guys make and save will go. So it would go into my Click and Go, my templates, practice pages, etc. And your templates and Click and Goes from last year carry over as well. So there's a folder for those. So we'll talk a little bit about what Click and Goes are in a minute. But we'll just move right on down the list here into the themes. And the themes are collections of templates where they have maybe 20 different templates that all match one another. So within each theme, and you'll see they each have a name, so you can click on any of those themes, and then within the theme, you'll see that there's a title page. There's an opening and closing spread. There's student life pages, academics, clubs, sports, etc. And so the nice thing about the theme templates is that they all match each other. And so they'll use the same fonts, the same colors, the same graphic elements, etc. So that's a really great way for a school to keep a really cohesive look to the yearbook if you stick within one of those themes. So I'm just going to grab a template, and everything's drag and drop. So once you drag it onto your page, it'll place it on there for you. And then from there, you can really modify these templates as much or as little as you need to. So I always recommend starting with a template and then modifying from there. It's much easier than just designing from a blank page. So you can always click on any of these photo boxes. If you need to delete them, you can hit delete on your keyboard. If you need to make them larger, you can take them and drag any of those little yellow boxes on the corners, and you can make them larger. If you want to rotate your photo box, there's a little button up at the top that will allow you to take it and drag it to rotate. So you can really modify these templates as much or as little as you need to. Same thing with the text boxes. So again, if you drag any of the corners, it's going to change the size. If you need to rotate, there's that little button up at the top again. You'll notice that since I did edit this text box, and now the box isn't big enough for the text that's in it. That's why you see that red X there. So I just stretch the box a little bit and that'll get rid of that X. So it's just a safety feature to tell you that there's not enough space for what you've got in the box. So I'm going to keep moving on with the templates. So there's all of the different themes. And then below the themes, we have what are called modular templates. And these are pieces of templates. So the little modules, they're color coded by size. So like this blue module is kind of a small square. And these are things that, they're not 2-page templates, they're just little pieces. So you can click and drag this and you can kind of mix and match with, the templates and the modules within. So there's the blue ones, like I said, are kind of square. The green are more rectangular. So if you have a better space for those, you could certainly, mix and match some of those in there. The pink are kind of long and thin. So there's just some different shaped modules there for you. And then below the modules are the page surfer templates. These are just some of our older templates, and they're broken down by category. So things like candids and sports and clubs and things like that, but those do not match any of the themes. So they're kind of mix and match templates that you could certainly use and make look like your theme. Like if you were using this theme here, you could certainly modify these candid templates to use the fonts that you wanted, the colors that you're using here, and things like that. A lot of schools like these candid templates because they don't have as much text. They're pretty much just a headline and some photos, and they're good if you're doing like a collage page or something like that. So lots of page surfer templates to choose from as well. Then below that, we have what are called the click and goes. And so these are pieces of templates. They're not entire 2-page spreads. So these are things like headlines, scoreboards, sidebars, things like that. So maybe you're working on your sports pages and you're not crazy about the scoreboard that was on the template that you chose. Here's a bunch more to pick from. Okay, so again, these are just pieces of templates and you could drag them onto your page and kind of incorporate it with the layout that you're using. All right, if we keep scrolling down further, then we have some ad templates. We also have portrait templates. So if you were doing your portrait section, these are broken down into either the size of the photo or the number of photos per page. All right, and then we also have what are called the template exchange, and that's just a way for schools to share the templates that they've created with other schools. So if you look in the community templates, you could find templates from anywhere in the country and you really never know what you're going to find in there. So I've found some really cool stuff just kind of digging through. And then the Jostens sales ones, those are all Chuck's schools that have shared some things. So anything in the Delaware, Maryland area. And then new this year, you can have favorite designs. So if there's a design that you want to use and you like that template, you can click on this little star here and you can favorite a particular design or a particular click and go. And that way you'll be able to find it easily later on. So if you guys chose a theme, for example, you could maybe favorite the templates that you're using just to make it easy. All right. So the other thing I like to mention as far as designs, so let's say we worked on this template a little bit and we modified it the way that we wanted, and then we wanted to save it to use on other pages. You can go into the file menu and there is the option to just save. So that'll save it on the page that it's on, but there's also save as a template. And so I'm just going to call this one sample. But when you save as a template, then when you go back into the design tab, up here in the custom heading, you'll see my templates. And so here's the sample template that I just saved. So you could use that on multiple pages in the yearbook without having to recreate anything. So that's definitely something that you want to keep in mind when you're working on your templates. All right, the next tab down is the images tab. And so this is where all of your photos are going to be located. So you'll see a couple different headings to start with. Portraits, so that's obviously where all of your portraits will go. And then you'll see that you start with academics, clubs, sports, things like that. And then you can create additional folders. It looks like your school has already created a bunch of folders, so that's great. So I am going to see, Okay, great. I just wanted to find a folder that had a couple photos in it, just for examples. So photos are drag and drop as well. So you'll see that as you drag them over the image box, the box will turn green. If you ever see a box turn red, that means that the photo is not large enough to go inside of that photo box. Sometimes that'll happen if the photo resolution isn't high enough or something like that. So just be aware. But these seem to be okay. So I'm just going to take this and plop this right in this photo here. And I'm going to go ahead and hit the save button because I want to show you guys this little check mark. Once you place a photo somewhere in the yearbook and you hit save, you'll see this check mark. And that's a really nice safety feature so that you don't use the same image more than once. And you'll also notice that if I take this photo and try to place it somewhere else, it's going to give me this duplicate image warning that says, hey, you've used this already. Are you sure you want to do this? So it's a really nice safety feature on the site. So I really recommend, unless it's like a stock photo of the front of the school or the mascot or, something like that, you probably don't want to use the same photo more than once. All right. The other thing that you'll see with the photos, if you're tagging the photos, it will actually put a little tag down here when the photo has been tagged with a student name. So that's a really helpful thing if you're working on doing an index, which some schools do, some schools don't. But that's another icon that you might see down here. All right, so from here, if you want to upload images to this folder, you can click this upload button here at the top. And so you'll see this window come up and you'll be able to browse for the images on your computer. So you'll click here and just select the photos from wherever they are on your computer. And then if you are using Google Drive and you want to sync up your Google Drive and upload from there, you can click this Google Drive logo. You can link it up with your Google Drive and you'll be able to upload right from there. So that's a new feature that's really cool. All right, so those are your images tab. The next one down is your art tab. And so the art tab is basically for adding a new element to your page. So if you want to add an additional photo box, you'll see the different shapes here. So you could take those and drag them onto your page. If you wanted to add a piece of clip art, you could click on the clip art and then drag that onto your page. If you wanted to add a shape, so something like these orange boxes here, if you wanted to add a line, all of those are here in the shapes. This is adding a flowable element. So that's for portraits or index. And we'll talk about those later in the year, how to do your portraits and everything. And then background. So if you wanted to add a background to your page, you'll see all backgrounds here. Again, you can favorite your clip art. If you had a background that you wanted to use in multiple places in the book, you can click on the little star to favorite that so that you can easily find it again. All right, the next tab down is your text tab. So this is how we would add a new text element to the page. So up here at the top, there's the option to add or remove styles. So this is a great thing to do at the beginning of the year, and typically something that an advisor or editor would do. But you'll notice over here, there's an edit button next to each of these. So basically what you can do is you can choose the fonts for your headline, tagline, subheading, etc. And so you would choose the font and the font size. And that way, when you go to add a new headline to your page, it's already the font and the size that you are using throughout the book. So the other thing I like to mention is the page number. That's usually right here, but I'm not sure why it's not showing the word page number. You'll see when I clicked it and dragged, it did give me a page number. So if you are adding page numbers to individual pages and not putting it on the master template, just make sure that you do use that page number option that's normally right there, because these page numbers will automatically change to the page that you're on. You'll see right now it says 6, and then if I move it over here, it will automatically update to say 7. Right. And the reason that we want to do that is because if later in the year we decide that we need to move some pages around, if you've used a regular text box and typed in that it's page number 6, and then you move it to the back of the book, it's still going to say it's page 6. So if you use one of our page numbers, then it will automatically update to the correct page. So it's really important to use those. And it looks like now it is showing that there. Right, the next tab down is the flow tab. So that's something that we'll talk about later in the school year. Portraits are something that you should never upload yourself. That's something that you should have the Jostens Plant upload for you. And then you'll be able to flow the names and the photos right onto the page once you have your template on there. So we'll talk about that later in the year. This layer tab just shows you each of the layers on your page. And basically it's like if you were using Photoshop. So you can see, where the page number is and then where some of these different text boxes are. So if you have things layered on top of one another and you can't click on the text box that you're looking for, you can use this layer tab to click on that particular text box. You can also lock layers from here too. There's a little padlock here. And then the last tab down here is the history tab. Now this is something that advisors have, but students do not. And basically every time that you hit the save button, a version goes into your page history. And so that way, if you need to go to the way that the page looked last week or 2 weeks ago, you have all of those options there. You can just talk to your advisor and have them pull it up for you. All right, so that's all of the tabs over here. I like to mention all of these buttons up here. They're pretty self-explanatory. Undo, redo, spell check, print. Virtual book will allow you to actually go to a book where you can flip through the different pages. There is a comment button here. So if you comment on a page, it will actually show over here. It'll show who made the comment and when and all of that. And it's a great way to communicate back and forth with your advisor. That way, if you need to interview somebody or you need a photo of someone, you can make those notes on the individual pages. So it's a great way to, just make notes about a particular layout, but not have them print in the book. So they're kind of off to the side here. Right, and then the last button up here is save. Obviously, we want to make sure that we're saving our work regularly. Then up here at the top, this will show the page that you're on, and you can use the little arrows there to toggle back and forth to the next page. And here's where you can zoom in all the way up here at the top right. The other menus that you'll see will change depending on what you're clicked on. So if you click on a text box, you'll see that you get the font and the size, the color, your underline, bold, italic, all of those things. Then if you click on a photo, you'll see that you get photo formatting. So things like stroke, which is a line around the outside of your image. So you can change the width of the stroke here. I will zoom in a bit so I can show you some of the different things in here under formatting and effects. So you'll see that you can round out the corners of your photo box. You can make your photo transparent. You can also tint your photo, which makes it lighter without being transparent. So tint and transparency are really cool to use. Like if you wanted to put a photo as your background, you could kind of tint it down. If you wanted to put a photo behind a text box, again, you could tint it down. So just a great way, to not have a photo or even a background be as dark as it comes in. Then we have what are called the drop shadow and the glow. So the basic difference between the two, drop shadow goes on two sides. So it's as if it has a shadow. So you'll see if I move some of these sliders, you'll see the shadow there. I'll delete this photo box so you can see it better. But you'll see the distance can be changed. The degree is where on the photo the shadow will show up. So you can move that around. The opacity can be changed, the blur. So you can kind of move the slider bars and get the shadow to look the way that you want. And the glow is very similar, except that it goes all the way around the image and not just on two sides. So again, you can choose a color here. You can change the opacity. You can change the blur. Okay. You can add text wrapping to an image. So if you're using text wrap, basically you need to text wrap the image as well as the text box. Both have to be done in order for it to work properly. So there's a couple different options here for how you want to wrap. And this works really great with a round photo. So if I right click, I can actually change this to a round photo so that we have a great example for you. All right, so if I go ahead and I go back to my text wrap, and something else I'll mention, this little pin here will allow you to take this menu and move it to wherever you'd like. And then even if I'm not clicked on a photo, that menu will stay out. You'll notice before when I clicked off of the photo, the menus kind of disappeared. But the nice thing about pinning it is that it will stay. All right, so I'm gonna wrap this to the element, which is this third option here. You'll see this is no text wrap. This is the bounding box, which is the box around the element. And then this is wrapping tight to the element. And as I roll over them, it does tell me what they are. So if I choose this one here, you'll notice that my text box now, and this text box doesn't have a lot of text in it, but you will see that if I move it around the image, it's going to move so that it's just around the oval there and not over top. All right, so you'll see that the text box also has text wrap checked there. All right, so some other photo formatting. This is the Snap Edit tool. So this does some Photoshop type editing. This will allow you to add some filters. You know, if you have a photo that's too light or too dark, this will allow you to edit that. So you'll see here in filters, there's black and white, sepia tone. You can overlay a color over top and you can choose your color here. You'll see that you can colorize, which is similar to the overlay, but it just is a little bit brighter and more color than the overlay. And with all of these, you can move the slider bar to change the way that it looks too, because if it's too bright there, you know, we want to tone it down a bit, you know, maybe that's a little bit better with this particular color. Then, you know, if you have a photo that's too bright or too dark, here's where you would adjust the brightness. If you have a photo that needs a little bit more contrast, here's where you could adjust the contrast. Same with saturation, if you wanted to make the colors a little bit more or less saturated. In fact, if you go all the way down with the saturation, it will just turn it black and white. And then over here is your mask. And so a lot of schools use this for cutting out backgrounds. And so when you're in the mask tab here, you need to enable the mask. And then there's a couple different kinds of erasers. So there's a regular eraser, which will literally just erase anything that you scroll over. And then there's the smart eraser. And so as long as there's enough of a difference in color between the foreground and the background, it will erase just the background. So if you have a photo where the colors are very close, it doesn't work as well. So for example, if someone is wearing a white shirt and they're standing in front of a whiteboard in a classroom, there's not going to be much of a color difference between the two shades of white. So in a photo like this, where you have someone with a picture frame, okay, you see that as I'm scrolling over, even though I'm going over top of the picture frame, it wasn't erasing the picture frame because it could tell the difference between the frame and the background. So the smart eraser sometimes will work great, and then on other photos it won't. So you kind of have to play around with that one a little bit. You can change the brush size. So if I wanted to, you know, quickly erase, this photo is a great example for cutting out a background because it is pretty easy to cut out, you know, just the parts that we want. And then there is the uneraser, so that will paint the picture back if we go a little too crazy. Okay, so that's how we would do a cutout background. Right here, you'll see that you can change the mask area to either be transparent, which is what you're seeing now, or the other cool thing that you can do is you can have part of the photo be black and white and the other parts of the photo be in color. So again, this photo is really cool for doing effects like this because what you could do is you could have everything except what's inside the frame be in color, and then have, or I'm sorry, you could have everything inside the frame be in color and have everything else be in black and white. So that would be a really cool effect. And then there's also this button to invert. So that would change the inside to black and white and the outside to color. And if it was transparent, then you'll see it would do the opposite. It would just remove this part. Okay, so you've got a lot of different options there as far as, you know, masking and erasing the background and colorizing the photo. So once you're done doing your edits, you would hit the save button, and that way it saves a copy of the image and it doesn't save over top of the original. So once I hit save, you'll see that that is the image that's placed inside the photo box. And it does take a minute for it to render. So just give it a second here. Okay. Since this is a round photo, it's not real easy to see what was removed, but you know, we could always you know, remove this stroke, and you know, we could change it a little bit so that that was easier to see. All right, so that was the snap edit tool. There is a crop tool here. And so if you click on the crop tool, this will allow you to move the photo around within the photo box. And then if you need to zoom in on the picture, you can click on the corner here and drag, and then you can choose just which parts you want to feature in the photo box. And then when you click off of it, that's what you're left with. The other way to crop is to just double click on the photo. That will bring up the crop tool as well. Right, and then the last button here will allow you to delete the image, but not the photo box. So that'll just leave you an empty photo box again. All right, so I'm going to zoom back out. There's a couple other really cool tools that I love to show because I just think they're really neat. So if you click on more than one element, so if you hold down Shift and have multiple elements selected, you do get some additional buttons over here. And so I like to show these, and I'm going to purposely move these so that they're not lined up. So you'll see that I have two boxes here, and if I wanted to align them and make sure that they were lined up, there is a button here. It's under the Arrange menu. Up here, you can choose to align the top of two elements. You could align the bottom. If you had two elements that were, or a couple elements that were on top of one another, you could align the side. So you could take these three, highlight them all, go in and align the left side. So you see how that works. So I love these arrangement tools. The other really cool arrangement tool, now you'll see that there's different amount of spacing between these boxes here. Let me move this. So there's just a little bit of space here and there's more space here. If you select all three of these boxes, the other thing in the arrangement tools is distribute. So this will distribute the spacing evenly between the elements. So, you know, this would be horizontally. Since these photos are vertical, if we click on this button here, you see it move this photo box. So now there's even spacing here and here. So just another really cool tool that I love to show to staffs because, you know, if you're designing pages and you've moved some things around, you want to make sure they're lined up, those tools really come in handy. All right, so that's all I like to show in the Page Designer. I'm going to go to the image library quickly, and then we'll come back and I'll answer any questions that you guys have, and I'll turn the recording feature off. Right, so I'm going to go into the Create menu, and I'm going to go into the image library. I am not going to save my changes. So the image library is where all of your photos are going to be housed. And so I just like to show, you know, the folder structure and how to create a new folder and things like that. So there's basically a couple of different kinds of folders. There's a basic folder, which is visible to everyone. And then there's a hidden folder, which is just for advisors. Those are great if you're doing senior ads or something like that, that the staff doesn't necessarily, you know, maybe that senior is on the yearbook staff and you want to hide that. So in here, you'll see that you have a bunch of different folders. You usually start off with 6 under the activity heading, and then you'll have some of these up here. So if you're using Replay It, Any images that are uploaded by students or staff, they go into the inbox for replay it. If you have questions about that, we can talk about that in a couple minutes, if that's something that you want to use. If you're using Justin's ad services, then the photos from that go in here. Any portraits will go under the portrait heading. So the portrait category would have a folder for each grade level or each class. And then everything else that's not a portrait should go under your activity heading here. So you start with a couple different folders, and then you can certainly create subfolders. So the way that we do that is to click on the folder and then click on the little plus sign here, give it a name, and then it'll create these additional folders. If you want to upload directly to a folder, you can click on that folder and click the upload button. And then again, just like when we were in the Page Designer, you can upload directly from your computer, or you can link up your Google Drive and upload directly from your Google Drive. All right. So I highly recommend creating, folders for every club, every sport, just so it makes it easier. I feel like the more folders you have, the easier it is to find exactly what you're looking for. If you were to dump, 1,000 sports photos into one folder, it's going to be really hard to find the football pictures when you're doing a football spread. So it's really great that you guys have already created different folders for all of your sports. All right, so I am going to go ahead and turn off the recording.